Roll it out.
Welcome to the Committee on Academic and Workforce Success. We are convening and will immediately take a break to eat lunch. We will be convening in the dining room for a short, let's say, 30-minute lunch. We'll be back at 12:15 to finish the rest of the agenda. Thank you. Jacob is in the hall. Tesher's here. Dr. Tesher. Technically, he's here. Thank you. We have three members present. A fourth is coming. Please be advised this meeting is being broadcast over the Internet. Item 2, consideration of approval of the minutes from the September 24th, 2014 committee meeting.
Move approval.
You have a motion? Motion by John, second by David. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion is approved. Agenda item 3 is consideration of approval of the consent calendar. Items on the consent are 5G, 5I, 1 through 5, and 5N, 1 through 7. However, we've received a late comment on items 5N, 1 through 7. It's recommended that we now remove those proposed rule changes from the consent calendar. We have received some comments on the items 5N, 1 through 7, which are rule changes. And previously, we've put those on the consent calendar if there were no comments. However, now we have comments, so it's recommended that we remove.
All 7 of them?
Right. Do we receive comments on all 7? Or were there some that we did not receive comments on?
You want me to explain this a little bit?
Yes, thank you, Rex.
The 7 rules are identical except for the name change. Then they all deal with fields of study. And so the idea is to allow us the ability to form fields of study committees over the next year. So there are actually 7 different fields of study requiring then 7 different rules. We received one comment from an institution that it was deemed appropriate to include in the rule itself, so that's the request to remove it from the consent
We can group them all
calendar.
together.
So move removal of the N1 through 7 from the consent calendar.
Yes. Second?
John?
Need a second.
Oh, okay, second. But we're removing them.
We're removing them from the consent calendar and putting them on the agenda.
Is there anything else left after you remove them?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
5G and 5I.
So is that a separate motion, or you want to make it the same?
And
First,
then, I guess,
then we'll
and then
have a
move
second.
approval of the consent calendar if you want to take it in 2 motions.
That'd be fine.
Okay.
Okay, second, the removal.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes to remove.
Move approval of the consent calendar.
And
Second.
now we have that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Motion passes. Agenda item 4 is for public testimony. At this time, we do not have anyone signed up for public testimony. So item 5A1 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from Texas A&M University Corpus Christi for a Bachelor of Science degree with a major in electrical engineering. Mr. Peebles.
Thank you, Chair. This proposal is from TAMU Corpus Christi for a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. As detailed in your blue pages of the agenda, there is at least a moderate workforce need to be served by this. There is only one other institution within 60 miles, and that would be Texas A&M at Kingsville that has a similar program. But the area is growing both in population and in workforce demand, so there is some need for this. It would be a 126 semester credit hour program, which is pretty average in terms of engineering programs, and will also seek ABET accreditation when the time comes. This is an institution that has other engineering programs, so they can use their facilities and equipment for it. So most of their costs then will be confined to personnel cost for this particular program. And we do have representatives present from the institution. If you have any questions about this, I'd be glad to try to answer them, or I'll let them address your concerns.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion, questions? All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Motion passes. Thank you.
Can I just add, and it's already passed, but I just have a question.
Absolutely.
Can I?
Turn your mic on. Thanks.
Rex, on this, where it says job market need, and
Yes, sir.
it has strong, moderate, weak. It's moderate, I'm assuming, is what you said. This is on the second
Yes, sir.
page. Where it says employer surveys, it says no. Does that mean that employer surveys weren't performed? Are you looking at the same page?
Yes, sir. I am. Doug, you want to? Was this yours? Okay. We did not receive any.
Okay.
Just wanted to clarify that from staff before I answered. So.
Thanks.
Item 5A2 is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from Texas A&M University for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in ecology and evolutionary biology.
Thank you. This is another interdisciplinary program in ecology and evolutionary biology, which actually brings together a number of programs at Texas A&M, from the College of Science, the College of Geosciences, Veterinary Medicine and Biomedical Sciences, and the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences. So, and most of the evidence provided to us from TAMU and information that we looked at supports the idea that there is a changing job market for life science graduates, and that interdisciplinary programs are becoming or will become more and more common as we go forward. And as folks draw from different disciplines, this is also pretty helpful in terms of being able to establish the program, because it allows the institutions to draw faculty, facilities, and equipment from existing programs. And it really helps cut down on the cost of some of these programs by doing so. It's a 64-semester credit hour program, but also includes a significant portion of this in dissertation research, which is not unusual in life science PhDs. It's also somewhat of a collaborative project with Galveston, and students will spend their first year in College Station and then go to Galveston to do the primary portion of their research.
So as far as employment for these graduates, it's generally education, instruction,
And research.
and research. Good. Any questions, discussion?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 5A3, consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to a request from Texas A&M University Kingsville for a Doctor of Philosophy degree with a major in Sustainable Energy Systems Engineering. Rex.
Thank you. This is also another multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary proposal, and it would also be one of the first of its kind in the state. As your blue pages will tell you, there are two other institutions that have similar programs, or have programs under the zip code of general engineering, but don't have programs that specifically address the area of sustainable energy systems. And one of the interesting things I learned is that sustainable energy is one thing, and sustainable energy systems is actually a little bit different, because it focuses on how do you, even in terms of something that we don't view as a sustainable resource, such as oil that will eventually go away, there is a lot of effort made to make sure that as we extract these resources, it's also done in a sustainable manner, both in terms of the natural resource itself, but also in terms of the environment. So this program tries to add those kinds of elements to this, and as we all know, in the South Texas area with the Eagle Ford, this has become energy production has become even more dominant than it has been before. Kingsville also has very strong both bachelor's and master's degree programs in engineering that have been growing over the years. And so it's another one of those that they can use a lot of their own existing resources, but they have also made promises to hire the appropriate faculty and to address the needs.
Rex, do you have any concern about the lack of institutional success in the doctoral graduation rate?
A little bit, but they have, our analysis of this shows that they have come up some. And I think particularly over the next 5 years, as we look at the annual reports from this program, but also look at their program review of existing programs, we'll be looking at that pretty closely.
Did they identify some barriers to success that they can overcome? Do they need resources from their system? Any idea what the root cause may have been?
I don't. No, sir, they did not. We could ask them that. We do have representatives here from Kingsville, if you would, and from the Texas A&M System office, if you would like to.
Yeah, maybe if they could come forward and
Sure.
and discuss that.
I believe we have Dr. Stephen Nix and Dr. Mohammed Abdurrahman.
Yeah.
That was close.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for being here.
So the university really considers this to be a very important program for us, and we have dedicated a lot of resources, if this gets funded to address any issues that might come up in terms of laboratory development and so on. So the university have put significant or promised significant resources for development of laboratories that would be needed, for that new energy program. In terms of hiring faculty and so on, we're promising to hire at least one faculty that's focused on energy systems. But because of the growth, we're actually hiring a lot of faculty whose expertise will be substantial also to support this program. So it's really kind of building on resources that we have across the college, not in just a specific department. And that's the beauty of having the multidisciplinary approach.
So I guess my question was more on a generalized, do you have a limited number of doctoral programs and they're just getting up and running? Because your success rate is 48% compared to the state's 58%.
And this number was up to only 2013. Like the environmental engineering program have graduated 4 new students after this actual program. We have also instituted for the environmental engineering program an incentive program where the funding is tied actually to the success rate. So every student is funded for a shorter period of time, so that we incentivize the student and the faculty, to push the graduation rate. So that part, again, just as part of the A&M Kingsville commitment, the university have waived fees for the student for the first 4 years in order to incentivize that graduation for the PhD students only.
I have a question. Do you have any industrial endowments that might help you with this, or has there been an interest from industry?
Okay, so we have had a lot of support. We don't have an industrial endowment, but we have a lot of support. The staff really from THECB asked us to show a lot of support, and we were able to collect at least about 40 support letters from industry, from institutions, even again with the energy growth, even going all the way from community colleges to other institutions that are bigger than us. Our environmental engineering program is currently ranked in the top third of the environmental engineering programs in the country. We have placed some of our graduates actually in, like Texas Tech has one of our graduates, and we have them all over the place. So.
Very good.
I'd like to move approval.
Second.
Discussion.
Dr. Nix, do you want to say anything? Or?
I was just going to add some comments about our PhD programs. I mean, Kingsville is noted for some highly successful, what I would call niche programs. And wildlife sciences, for example, bilingual education, our environmental engineering program. So we have a good track record in those 3. The environmental, as Dr. Abdurrahman was saying, is highly ranked, very successful. I think the relatively low graduation rate, I think, was the result of some stumbles, I think, in the first few years of getting it going. But as he pointed out, in the last few years, we've had a much better success. We graduated 4 last spring, I believe. And so the number has gone up quickly, and we've taken steps to push them through a little more quickly. So I don't see that as a barrier any longer.
Very good. Thank you for being here. We have a motion on the table with a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion passes. Thank you. Item 5B is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to awarding the Carl D. Perkins reallocation funds. Rex.
Thank you. As your blue pages indicates, Perkins funds are allocated once per year and then reallocated once per year. And the reallocations come from monies that are unspent, reserve funds that are unspent. Believe it or not, most institutions do not actually spend all of their initial allocation in the time frame that they're supposed to. And I've been asked more than once, well, why not? And part of that has to do with initially they get better deals on equipment. Timelines sometimes are different than what they anticipated initially. So we wind up with money left over in Perkins that can be reallocated. But one of the things that we want to do differently going forward is the reallocation. The initial allocation is always based on pure formula. But the reallocation, in the past, we have always based it on the formula as well. And what we would like to do going forward in this next year, the next fiscal year, is base the reallocation on 50% based on the formula and 50% based on meeting certain performance indicators. And those indicators are outlined in your blue pages as achieving a credential of some sort, going on and transferring to another institution, or retention in the program itself, and or employment, which are also performance measures as well. And then in the year after that, go to 100% of the reallocation based on the performance on these particular measures. And these are also Perkins measures that the state has to adhere to every year. And while we have met all of them this year, some of those we have just barely met. And so we want to try to incentivize the institutions to try to reallocate their funds in a way that they can address these incentive measures.
Some outcome-based funding here.
Yes.
All right, questions? A motion?
Second.
We have a second. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. All right. Moving on. Item 5C is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications and the allocation of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Improvement Act funds to colleges for basic grants for 2015 and 16. Dr. Peoples.
Thank you. This is the basic allocation that I just referred to for next year, and it is formula-based, and it's based on the number of enrollments that institutions have in CTE programs and the number of those students that receive Pell Grants. So there's a calculation of that formula, and then the money is allocated based on that. There's a couple of possible caveats in this, and one is that Perkins is going through reauthorization right now, although it's going through reauthorization for some time. And what we're unclear of at the moment is exactly what that reauthorization will look like. Currently, we would base the RFA on the current law and rule. There's also a new OMB circular coming out about grants that this RFA will have to adhere to. And then we'll make changes to the RFA in accordance with any new procedures or requirements that come out of any new Perkins reauthorization.
To clarify, this is a federal grant that comes to the state and then is or is it
Yes.
is a block grant to the state and the state decides how it's going to be spent? Or
It is, well, it is in some sense a block grant to the state, but the federal the Perkins Act itself does stipulate how the money is allocated. In other words, the formula that we use for the allocation is given to us by the Perkins law. And the money comes to the state. Currently, 70% of the total allocation to the state goes to public education, and 30% comes to higher education.
Oh, okay.
And then the coordinating board is responsible for then.
So there is a chance that could be changed.
Yes.
So we don't really know what the final outcome will be.
At this point, we really don't.
But in case we get some money, this is what we want to do.
In the event,
Okay.
we'll be prepared to issue the RFAs. And
All right, any discussion or questions? Need a motion.
Motion.
We have a motion from David and a second from Jacob. Questions, discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
thank you.
Item 5C is consideration, no, that is item 5C, right. Item 5D is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications and the awarding of the Carl D. Perkins Career and Technical Education Improvement Act funds to colleges for leadership grants for 2015-16.
Yes, there are essentially two pieces of Perkins, and one is the basic grant, the allocations that we give through the formula for career and technical programs at both the 50 community colleges, but also TST schools and Lamar Tech institutions are also eligible for these funds. But there's a portion of it that's also set aside for what are called leadership grants. And these go through an RFA process. It's a competitive grant process that comes through the coordinating board. And these grants are designed to allow institutions to create some innovative curricular practices, to demonstrate best practices both in curriculum but also in workforce. Some of this money is used to maintain what is called the workforce education course manual, and hopefully in the future will also be used to provide some funds for ongoing programs of study for both their review as well. And so we use the leadership grants also, or go out to institutions to primarily develop curriculum. There are requirements for them to disseminate this information statewide. And so hopefully it results in it. If at least it doesn't result in a best practice, at least we'll get some information on what doesn't work.
Questions? Need a motion.
You do?
Yes.
Moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion passes. Item 5E is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications and the awarding of the grants for the Texas Science, Technology, Engineering, and Mathematics Challenge Scholarship Program.
Okay, thank you. This program is currently funded by a donation to the coordinating board from TG. And the program allows for scholarships for students who are at two-year institutions in STEM programs to allow them to continue in those STEM programs. And it's actually will be in its third year of operation, I believe. And while we've encountered a little bit of a bug or two with the allocation of the money, I believe we have all of that straightened out, and this RFA would allow us to award up to $6 million next year for institutions that want to establish or maintain their current scholarship programs. Students need to be enrolled in STEM programs. They need to maintain themselves in that program, and then hopefully they will transfer out of community colleges into STEM programs at four-year institutions or enter employment. And those students, by the way, are tracked going forward with this. Then those students will be tracked, and part of the monies available to them will be based on, to institutions will be based on the fact that they have students who either continue in a STEM program at that institution, continue at a four-year institution, or go to work in a STEM field.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5F is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to issuance of a request for applications and the awarding of grants for the engineering recruitment program, engineering summer program. Dr. Peoples.
Thank you. This program allows institutions to bring middle school or high school students onto their campuses during the summer. They're usually a week or two in duration, and the idea is to introduce those students to STEM programs, give them a little bit of feel for what a math or an engineering degree might be like, what the requirements are for that going forward. One of the problems that we run into with STEM education quite often is the fact that it was kind of alluded to this morning with the nursing program, and that's those students who want to do this, but they simply have not gotten the preparation that they need to be able to do it. And so and this is also a relatively new program that's had a lot of success, though. And they're small grants; they're $12,500 to each institution, but it does help them defray the cost of bringing in students and kind of showing them around and introducing them to STEM fields, and hoping that that introduction will inspire them to continue on, and at least give them the kind of career advice they need to be able to pursue it.
It's a good program. Questions?
Question. Is any of this focused to non-traditional STEM candidates, i.e. more toward females or minorities, to help us with our close the gaps?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Move approval.
Have a motion? Have a second? Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5G was on the consent calendar. 5H is a report on the Norman Hackerman Advanced Research Program Merit Review for the 2014-15 biennium. This is an informational item only. Rex.
Okay, and all of you should have a copy of the report. I think there are two sort of highlights from that report to note, and one is that the review process, while it is conducted by conference calls, by and large, it's also a rather extensive review, even though it takes place electronically. And one of the interesting things I find about it is they talk to recipients of the grants, but they also talk to folks who applied for grants but did not receive them. And I think the other thing to note about the report is that the review panel unanimously agrees that this is really an excellent way to try to promote research, especially at its most basic level in the state of Texas, but all would argue that the funding level is sort of woefully inadequate to the task. And you may recall that one of the things that we have asked for in our LAR is to increase the amount of money available from $1 million to $8 million per year.
Any questions?
So the current funding is really only 5% of what they're asking the target to become, which is $20 million.
Yes.
So even an eightfold increase only gets them to 40% of what they really would want. Mm-hmm. So this requires no action, correct?
Right.
Correct. Jerry.
I was just wondering, this was on the LAR as either like, I believe when we set this up, we either said we wanted it kind of fully funded or not funded at all type of issue where like
that was some of the discussion, yes.
It was so trimmed down that it's almost ineffective.
It was down to $1 million, wasn't it? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I want to make sure we were talking about the same.
John, yeah.
Yeah, we go big or go home.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Item 5I, 1 through 5, are on the consent calendar. 5J is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the approval of amendments to provide additional funding and extend contracts to April 2016 for teacher quality grant projects. Rex.
Well, thank you. The original awards for this were made in January of 2014, where they were approved. And originally they had been on a 2-year cycle, and the awards are currently on a 1-year cycle due to uncertainty of funding from the federal government. This is another program where this is federal money that flows through the coordinating board. And in January of this year, we were given original approval for the program. In July of this year, we asked for approval to continue the 2000 teacher quality grants through 2014, 2015, for those to be continued through April of 2016, and to provide funds for that additional year. What we didn't know exactly at the time was how much those additional funds would be. So those additional funds have come in at roughly $4.6 million. This is all funded, by the way, under the old No Child Left Behind Act. And you can see behind your blue page there that what we're proposing is that those current recipients of the grants receive funding for this coming year under their current proposals. And it's an interesting program. It's lost a lot of money over time. This is one of those things that started off with a lot of federal money and has gradually dwindled over time, and now it focuses on T-STEM. But the idea is to really try to have some systematic and long-term change in curriculum and the way things are presented to folks in teacher educator programs.
So have these programs all been notified that they're getting a nice Christmas present?
If you approve, they will
Pretty
be.
nice.
Yes.
That's right. Questions about this item? Discussion?
Move approval.
Have a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ho, ho, ho. Motion passes. Thank you. Item 5K is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the July 2014 annual compliance reports for institutions under a certificate of authorizations, names beginning with P through Z. Rex.
As your blue pages tell you, in sort of anticipation of what might happen in Texas, we adopted a procedure last year before last, whereby what are popularly called Chapter 7 schools, proprietary schools operating in Texas, but also institutions from out of state operating in Texas. The old deal was to rely almost solely on accreditation, and the federal government has said that is not enough. And so in anticipation of also being told that might not be enough, as they told the state of Florida, I believe it was, at one point, we've instituted this process whereby the institutions are required to fill out a report annually to us that also indicates things like their financial stability, and at least to the extent that we can determine that, and they can determine that at the time. And since there are so many of them, we've divided the alphabet roughly in half, and now this is the last half of P through Z, and these reports have come into us, and what you'll notice behind your blue pages is a breakdown of those institutions that have a physical presence, those that do field-based learning in Texas that we have received their report, and everything seems to be in order. Those institutions that we have not received reports on that we're following up with, institutions that have some issues that we're also following up with. So one of the sort of fallouts, I guess, of this is that it does allow us to really take a closer look at institutions and see if they have any issues or problems. There are also a number of institutions here who have dropped their physical presence in Texas or are no longer offering clinicals or preceptorships or that kind of thing in the state anymore. So when they cease to do that, then we also close their certificate of authorization.
This is a long list. Do you have enough staff to really make contact with all of these schools? And
not really.
well, I'm just thinking if If you brought me this list and you told me, Janelle,
it's one of the reasons we do it in two pieces, but
that's a lot of work.
The reality is that we have enough staff to do some follow up with this. What we don't have, and so since I'll use this opportunity to editorialize a little bit, I guess, what we don't have enough staff to do is to follow up on institutions that are not a part of this, but they are a part of what are called fraudulent institutions.
Right.
And so, and we're working inside the division to try to restructure our assignments and duties so that we can deal with that a little bit better, and also do a little bit more follow up with these institutions as well. Now, this is the first year of this report, and so we're still learning a lot about how much follow-up do we need to do, how many institutions tend to fall into each category.
And how do you really enforce that if someone's really uncooperative with you?
Well, we can
Call the
revoke
AG.
we can revoke their certificate of authorization.
Okay.
So.
Any questions?
Doctor, about the annual compliance report, tell me about that. How lengthy is that, and how long does it take for someone to fill it out?
Well, I'm going to let is Cam back together. I'll let the person who is the most familiar with that report give you some details about it.
We use a template.
Ma'am, please introduce yourself.
I'm sorry.
Good, thanks.
I'm Kathy Mayert, Special Projects Director. We use a template that the institutions will use to fill out. It gives us updated contact information because with these schools it often changes, and sometimes we found out that we're emailing the school and that person is no longer there. We also ask them for updated accreditation information, and that's how we may find out that a school is on report or they're on notice for something, and that's when we'll ask them to keep us in the loop and be able to follow up to make sure that they are good with their accreditor. We also ask them to verify that they are following their accreditor's standards, particularly ones that we have that are quite similar in our own standards of operation. And then with the institutions that are here just primarily to do clinicals or internships, we also ask them to update us on where they have their students doing those clinicals or internships.
But when you don't get a report, will people, I'm just getting the feel, is it burdensome to have to do this, or is it something they can do easily? Or
I don't think the report is that burdensome. We ask them to give us a lot of links to their information so they don't have to copy a lot. For example, we also make sure that they have our student complaint policy on their website or in their catalogs. And so we allow them to just give us a link to that so that we can click on that and make sure that they're in compliance. So I wouldn't say that the reporting is all that burdensome. It's burdensome to sort of follow up with them if they don't actually reply, but they're getting better at it now that they know what to do.
Thank you very much.
Other questions?
Move approval.
Have a motion? And a second? Discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5L is a report to the Committee on Plans for Closure and/or Teach-Outs pursuant to Chapter 7, Subchapter A, Section 7.75, regarding Anthem College in Irving, Southwest Institute of Technology, Capital City Careers, Allied Health Careers, and Everest College in Fort Worth. This is an information item only.
Yeah, you may remember that we moved this from being in a what amounted to an approval after the fact to a report to the board. But as you can see, we've had several institutions that have closed since our last report, all but the last one due to financial instability. And you can also see some details there on whether provisions for teach out and or student records have been adhered to. And those are the two primary concerns that we have is whether students will have access to their transcripts and records going forward, and also how the students who are still in their middle of their degree program or certificate and still in that institution's pipeline, how they'll try to be taken care of in terms of allowing them to be able to continue their education somewhere.
A lot of students involved there.
Yes.
So this looks like more than the typical number of institutions. Is there a consolidation in the industry, or is it just the economic times, or is there something unusual going on? Trend?
I'm going to try to. I'll let Kathy try to address that, and then I might have something to say about it too.
Well, we've had two major brands in the career colleges that have gone through closures or sales recently. Anthem College did a lot of closures and they sold several of their campuses to another for-profit educational system. And Everest College is part of CCI, the Corinthian Colleges, which they have closed many of their campuses, but they have just recently entered into an agreement to sell 56 of their campuses, and I believe 2 of the Everest colleges here in Texas are part of that big sale to ECMC. And so I'm sure you've seen it in the news, the questions about it, but they're going to be changing those schools from for-profit to non-profit.
Do some of these schools specialize in a special education? What's the career they're actually, and there's maybe not a demand anymore, or no?
Some of them, like the 3 in Austin,
Paralegals?
Yeah, it's 2-year degrees, primarily
okay.
associate's degrees.
Okay.
And the 3 in Austin just closed very unexpectedly. I don't know all the reasons behind that.
Yeah, most of them do tend to have a focus on a particular area.
Yeah.
Either in terms of health related. You have other schools that tend to focus on things like automotive, machining, and that kind of thing. So a lot of these schools do have a focus on one or two particular areas.
Questions? Gary.
I was really worried about the 2 schools that don't have any teach-out plans, the Southwestern Institute of Technology and the Allied Health Careers. Schools where their students are kind of stuck now, where they've possibly incurred debt, they're not going to get any education. Have we reached out to them at all to let them know of any options that they have or what they can do, or are they just kind of stuck?
Well, we try to, and also the Texas Workforce Commission also handles a lot of these schools as well. They tend to be responsible for those that are certificate-only institutions. We're responsible for those who offer degrees. A lot of institutions offer both. So so TWC is also involved in this, and both entities have tried where we can to reach out to other institutions or to try to help facilitate some of this. But we have very limited virtually no authority in that area. And the problem is that once they close, some of them they close and they're gone, and it's difficult for the students then to get their records, which then makes it somewhat difficult for them to transfer places. And we ran into this with some schools in El Paso where, while the programs are very similar to what El Paso Community College was offering, it was still very difficult to articulate between the two because of the sequencing of the courses and also just the differences in the courses themselves.
There's no opportunity for us to fine these institutions when they're not compliant with really what our standards are.
It's very difficult. Kathy, you may have a comment on that.
I don't think we have
There's no statute to support that.
I don't think we really have a lot of power to do that.
Maybe that's something we should look at.
Yep. Chairman, could I just chime in there? I don't know if we could, it's too late to add it to our legislative priorities, but I am very concerned about proprietary schools that prop up, help the students incur a bunch of student debt, it's non-dischargeable in bankruptcy. And I mean, and lumping them in with legitimate community colleges, I think, is unfair. I mean, we need to call them out on it, and I don't know if that can be part of our legislative priority, maybe a bond requirement that if you want approval from this body, you got to come up with some sort of performance bond so that you don't leave kids in a lurch.
This is an issue that I'm very concerned about. I've had discussions with Rex and with David about this issue about how we can find ways to upgrade our monitoring of these schools. We relaxed the standards for opening these schools about 6 or 7 years ago, with the idea that we would monitor outputs more closely. With the budget cuts, we haven't done nearly as much as I would have liked, but we understand that this is a critical issue, as you pointed out, and we're going to find a way, and we will report back to the board about what we're doing in this regard. But it's an issue. I've had conversations with Bill Franz about this, about maintaining our fraudulent institutions list, keeping it current. And so we know that we've got a potential problem on our hands if we don't monitor these institutions properly.
Just to say, I think that's an excellent idea Mr. Monty has about a bond. But the session's right on us, so we're going to come up with something. We need to do it pretty quickly, right?
Well, we'll meet again very quickly and come up with some ideas, and we'll let you know what we think we might be able to do this session.
We have Dr. Tesher here.
Yeah, so when you said find them, I thought you meant find them, and the problem is you can't find them.
No, I know, but
And you know, so you can't find them, and I don't think we have a statutory authority, and Jacob came up with exactly the solution I was wondering is, if they had to post a bond, I don't care if we find them. I've got some resources to make the kids whole in that regard, and that might be something we need to pitch to our higher ed champions in the legislature. Certainly, this hits just about all parts of the state. I would imagine that these are constituents of a number of senators and state reps that probably we ought to direct those students who have been harmed to seek redress with their legislators.
well, and they're all for-profit corporations. I mean, they should have to at least
they're
abide
certainly
by.
registered with the Secretary of State.
Right, Jerry.
Well, they're supposed to be.
Well, that may be something we need to check on.
You had another comment.
I was just wondering if these schools are opening up not only in Texas but other surrounding states, do we ever forewarn those states that, look, we just had a big group of these schools that were shut down in our state? You might want to be observant, or?
Well, usually when they close all over the country. I mean, we did have the case in El Paso, but they also closed in New Mexico. That I know for a fact they also closed in New Mexico when they did that. So typically, when these institutions who tend to operate in a number of states, when they are closed due to financial instability, that tends to happen all over the place.
Yep. We tend to know it really fast because there's a very robust listserv of state regulators out there that will notify everyone else on the listserv as soon as there is a problem with an institution. So they become very quickly on everyone's radar.
Do we have any idea? I mean, kids that are going to these, are they eligible for Pell Grants, financing, that sort of thing?
Yes.
What do we have any idea of the kids that are going to the proprietary institutions? What the percentage of makeup of total students in Texas are, and if we do, how many do we have any idea what the delinquency is on the repayment of their loans? We do have that. I mean, I'd like to see that because I would suspect that, you know, there are much smaller percentage of the students than they are the delinquencies of the student loans.
We take we count students in proprietary schools in our tabulations regarding total enrollments and completions and so forth. And we've been getting those data from the institutions for several years. We know the default rates at proprietary institutions are higher than they are at conventional private or public institutions.
I just, whoever has that, I'd like to see it and share it with the board, if you don't mind.
We can get that information for you.
Thank you.
You know, one of the things to note is the gainful employment rules that are currently under review at the national level. If they're put in effect as is, they will primarily affect proprietary institutions. I saw some recent numbers on that the number of, and there will be a number of probably of community college programs affected by it, but it pales in comparison to the number of proprietary institutions that would be affected by it. And a lot of it is based on, since they're eligible for both Pell and loans, much of the business model revolves around federal aid for them. And so in both in the forms of Pell Grants and loans to students. And so the new gainful employment rules then establish thresholds for their default rates and that kind of thing. So, and it's still under review, and I think there's actually been a lawsuit now filed by some proprietary schools about it. And so we'll have to sort of see how that shakes itself out. But at some point, I think it will also be helpful in being able to monitor the institutions.
Other
Can I add
comments?
one more thing?
Yes.
We do require for certificate of authority and the alternative certificate of authority, we do already require them to have some sort of surety bond or bank account. So while that's a relatively small number, we only have 2 institutions under a certificate of authority right now. We do have that in our rules, that we require that, and we can look at, Bill told me, we could look at whether we can extend that to certificate of authorization.
I'll just say again, I think Mr. Monty had an excellent idea. I don't want to drift away from that. How do we get some assurance that that'll be followed through on? Do we need a motion? I guess
We've heard it loud and clear. That's, you want action on this, and we will meet in the next couple of days and take a look at how we can develop a proposal for you and let you know about it.
Commissioner, I know that you say it often, but we've got to keep our focus on these kids and these students, and this is an area maybe we could really help.
Frankly, I'm very pleased that the board is concerned about this issue. I am as well, and I like the idea of a bond, and we'll see whether it's feasible or not.
Great. Very good. Thank you. Item 5M is lunch. That has been performed. Item 5N, 1 through 7. We have supplemental material on this. It is the consideration of adopting the Commissioner's recommendation to the committee relating to the proposed new sections of Chapter 1, Agency Administration, Subchapter T, Sections 1.220 through 1.226 of Board Rules concerning the establishment of the Engineering Field of Study Advisory Committee. Do you want me to go ahead and tell the other fields are also music, nursing, business, communications, engineering, and Mexican-American studies.
You're saying maybe we can do all these?
Well, I just want to go ahead and highlight those, and then we can take them all separately, but Rex will discuss them and then vote on them separately.
Yes, because the rules themselves are all identical,
Right.
with the exception of the field that it applies to. And under current statute, this is sort of the way we have to do it, is to have a rule to have a field of study advisory committee, which is not necessarily a bad thing, because what it does is it requires us to bring together faculty from both 2-year institutions and 4-year institutions that are teaching and supervising in these particular disciplines to look at those lower division courses beyond the core curriculum that can be used and then made applicable to majors at a 4-year institution. And so we've talked about this a little bit before in the context of one of our legislative requests, and that is to allow us to do actually funding for fields of study, but also add programs of study at this level. And what this set of rules will do, and we may not and probably won't, in fact, do all of these in this coming year, but we hope to do 2 or 3 or 4 of these in the coming year, and so this will allow us to go through that process. We did receive one comment on the rules, and in your supplemental materials, that comment is found. You can see the comment on the first page, and it's under Part C, about 2/3 of the way down. It's in bold letters for you. And we received a comment from institution where it says an institution shall consult with the faculty of the institution. And they wanted to add the phrase in a manner that permits direct input from faculty representatives in the field of study. And what they're trying to do, I suppose, is make sure that the institution and through its representatives on the committee that they actually go back and consult with folks in the discipline itself. And that's the reason for pulling it from the consent calendar to make it a voting item.
Dr. Tesher.
So is there a staff comment or recommendation on the suggestion from the University of Texas at Austin?
Did it be included?
Okay, so I would like to move inclusion of the alternative language under item C be inserted into each of 5N1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, and that they be adopted as amended.
I second. And we can do it with the global motion, right?
Yes. Any discussion or questions? We have a motion and a second. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 5O is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the reallocation of work-study mentorship program funding. Dr. Laredo will present this.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Every quarter we come back to you with the work-study funds that have been assigned to our agency over the biennium. When we notice that money is not being spent, then we reach out to the institutions who are asking for additional funding because they have needs for their students. And so this item is to ask that we reallocate the $50,000 that was not used by one of the institutions to the other institutions, and it's in your packet. It explains, you'll see the breakdown of who is requesting the additional money and who it is being given to. We will again bring this back to you in the later spring with the next review. And the intent of doing this is to ensure that we expend all of the funds that we've been awarded in the biennium.
No dollar left behind. That's right.
Move approval.
That's our motto.
We have a motion. Second. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Hey, Dr. Gardner, could you share that information that you were just telling me about? I think that's be a good thing to have in the record.
No, that's fine. And this is regarding item, what item?
The item on the for-profits.
Oh.
L.
L.
L,
Okay.
I'm sorry. This is information shared with us with Suzanne Mettler from Syracuse University, who spoke with our planning committee. And according to the data she shared, that the graduation rates at the for-profits are 22%, that 94% of students borrow for a BA degree and borrow the highest median rate of any sector, $33,000, and they account for 47% of student loan defaults, 23% default within 3 years. Again, this is according to Dr. Mettler. And we do have I think we do have her on video, which any of you that are interested, we could share with you the link to that video so you could hear her entire presentation.
Thank you. I think we have our enough evidence that we need to be a little bit more strong with our filter on letting these schools. Okay, thank you, David. Item 5P is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the approval to amend the contract award for the Texas Success Initiative Professional Development Program to identify and develop the basic academic skills education non-course competency-based options. Dr. Laredo.
In June of 14, you gave approval to post an RFA in order to secure an individual or a company or an institution who would guide the process of professional development across the state in our work around the TSI, what we've learned from the TSI, and our work around the ABE and the students to be served. We would have identified an additional amount of funding to add to this contract that you originally approved of $500,000, to add an additional $250,000, as Ms. Shepard said, to work around and to help teach the institutions how to do the non-course base efforts with the base students, and that is why we are coming back to you for the additional funding to be added to that contract.
Where did we find that money?
We had money with our CRI budget that has come back in refunds, in addition to the fact that we've got some money from one of the grants that had not been expended, and they gave us approval to utilize those funds for this. And when we looked at $500,000, when you look at the state of Texas, which is quite large, $500,000 in all the institutions that we have does not go very far. So this amount of money will be an added bonus to help the contractor deliver that service.
Have we awarded that contract?
That contract, the applicant is Texas State University.
Okay.
It's an institution, and they will be developing and providing. They're not actually doing the training. They are doing the coordination of all that training, because we have institutions that have been identified out there who have done the work and are skilled at what they are doing. So, but it's a statewide effort. It will cover the entire state during the 15-16 academic year.
Any questions?
Move approval.
We have a motion. A second from Jacob. Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item 5Q is consideration of adopting the staff recommendation to the committee relating to the approval to increase the federally funded Texas Workforce Commission grant award to 3 accelerated Texas colleges. Dr. Laredo.
We received funding through Texas Workforce in the amount of $1 million, which you accepted. The funds to be used for training in the workforce area and critical shortage areas across the state, working with their workforce boards. One of the institutions, Hill College, has indicated that they cannot use the funds. So the funds have come back to this agency. It is not increasing the original $1 million award. What we are doing is reassigning those funds, as indicated in your packet, to the other 3 institutions. So we're continuing to move that money out the door that they have given to us, and we have to come back to you to get approval.
Doctor, you are just dividing it up between the other 3?
We're dividing
equally?
it up based on what they can serve, because they have to serve a certain number of students. That's part of the grant. They have identified additional students, and so that's why they're seeking the funding.
So move.
We have a motion. A second by Jacob. Discussion.
So, Judy, we're going to be serving, am I reading this correctly, up to an additional 17 students?
That is correct. At the institutions that are right here, they have 33, so there's an increase of 3 more. 47, an increase of 7. 47, another increase of 7.
Right, and how many were originally supposed to be served at Hill?
And I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can find out for you.
But if you do the math,
we originally started with 10.
Right.
Is the number. So, but I don't remember if that's exactly the number that was awarded to Hill originally. But I can find out.
So, if you kind of do the back of the napkin math here, you had, under the example of South Texas, 146,000 serving 33 students, but we're only getting an additional 17 for an additional 124. That doesn't seem mathematically the same.
It's the cost, I guess, of what the program is or where they're training, what they're training for, so that South Texas College now has increased by 3, so they had 30. So when the colleges applied, it was based on the workforce board's approval of the number of students that could be served by the institution. So I don't have in front of me to be able to say to you how much each of that training costs per student. I could find out, though.
But you see what I'm saying is, in the interest of, say, South Texas, they were serving 30 with 146,000.
And now with the additional 3, it's costing them the additional amount.
It
I see what
seems
you're
like
saying.
it should cost them less on a per additional student basis than it would, or at least the same, not more.
It just depends, I think, on the training that they're going into, the program that they're entering.
Okay, so the program may be more resource intensive.
That's right. And so, but I don't have that amount, but I can certainly find out for you.
Okay, yeah, if you can just kind of look at that before the board meets and maybe make a note of that to the board in the materials when it comes to the board.
I can certainly do that.
Thank you. Move approval.
We already did that, didn't we? Yes, we already had a motion on the floor.
Right.
So any other discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? No. Motion passes. All right, item 6 is adjournment. I need a motion.
So moved.
Second? Thank you.
Seconded, aye.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
How's your wife?